Welcome to Get It Done Entrepreneurs, where we talk with founders of companies who bet on themselves and won. My name is Rich LeBrun, and I am the founder and CEO of LeBrun Advisory Group. You can find us at rlebrun.com. Our mission is to help our clients build wealth through business ownership. Stick around to the end of the show and we'll reveal how you can be our next guest. Special guest today is Malcolm Peace. Malcolm is the founder of Tsetserra Growth Partners, a company specializing in acquiring family-owned businesses with established Texas legacies, which we'll get a chance to learn more about here in the show. Unlike traditional private equity firms and business brokers, Tsetserra takes a long-term approach, focusing on operating and growing businesses for sustained success. With his extensive background as a coach and consultant, Malcolm equips small firms with the necessary tools to address industry challenges, explore innovative approaches, and make informed decisions. Throughout his career, he has demonstrated deep understanding of macro and microeconomics, helping decision makers sales objectives, resolve personnel concerns, and improve overall processes. Moreover, Malcolm leverages his vast network of vetted resources, providers, and suppliers to foster lasting and mutual beneficial connections. Malcolm's unique perspective as a first-generation American with Southern African ancestry, coupled with his passion for business and civic engagement, shapes his current work. He actively contributes to the growth of small enterprises, recognizing their significance as employers and providers of essential resources for other families. Malcolm attended the college at James Madison University on a full academic and athletic tennis scholarship. Malcolm attended the University of Virginia's Darden School of Business, earning his MBA. After college, Malcolm worked directly with small and medium-sized businesses across the nation, improving their systems and marketing efforts. In 2018, he founded Tsetserra Growth Partners to bring his knowledge to businesses at home and in Texas. Today, Malcolm resides in Austin, enjoying the time with his family and all that Texas has to offer. With that said, welcome, Malcolm, to the show.
Wow. Thank you. What an honor to be able to have quite an intro. So I appreciate that. It's kind. We're grateful for where we're at now, but it's always a good reminder of kind of where we've come from. And I use we very intentionally because I believe, I'm grateful for the fact that life stumbled in the way that it did, that I got to start Tsetserra and where we're at now, but it wouldn't be here without all the different people that have been involved, and some that are still with us and some that have come and gone, and they were played critical roles at different times. I'm grateful. So I definitely use the we, and I'm honored to be a part of the show. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're very humble, and I appreciate that. And I'm sure your staff does as well. And I'm grateful that you took time out of your busy day to be on the show. But that said, I looked up your website and read a little bit about you. Tsetserra comes from as a meaning, I think, from your history of your family or where you grew up, so that just kind of is a good segue to talk about your story.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
How did you get in business? Why did you get into business? And maybe some story behind the name as well.
Sure. So Tsetserra comes from Mount Tsetserra, which is on the border of Mozambique and Zimbabwe. I have personally never been there, though that is very soon to be on the bucket list, I'm sure, or trying to figure all those logistics out. But my great-grandfather owned 70,000 acres on Mount Tsetserra, at the base of Mount Tsetserra, and then also owned another 50,000 acres just across the way at one of the other mountains. And all that to be said, he was known for being a tough business guy, but cared for the people internally and externally. He was one to make a deal, one to always compete for, best price and best opportunity, but definitely had a reputation of taking care of people really, really well. Generations of folks working for him in that manner. So all that to be said, that's really what the testament of the name is that our intention is that we're long-term buyers. We don't often go into a business with this is exactly how we're going to exit kind of strategy. We obviously have to think through that in case, we get to that point or we're looking at it. But really the intention is to hold on to this for decades. I'm mid-30s or so now, and the intention is that I'm probably doing this for the next 30 years unless I get interested in something else. And so as a result, I've got to think, could we hold on to this business for a decade, 2 decades, and 3? If that's the case, how do we want to treat both the people internally, reputationally wise, and then also externally our customers as well? because that actually permeates throughout the small business ecosystem and tends to get the best opportunities for us in the long term. So it's definitely intentional that we want to take care of people. And we find that just comes around in the end. So that's where the name comes from and how it kind of fits into what we do today.
All right. Well, you started out working for corporate America. I mean, you went to college, got your undergrad, you got your MBA, which is fantastic. And then you were for corporate America, but then you ventured out and decided to do your own thing. Tell us about that journey of why you did that.
Great question. So I used my MBA program to essentially redefine myself. And I just remember all the University of Virginia Darden, academic advisors being like, I think this is a stretch. This is a stretch. And I still actually see one of them locally here in Austin to this day. And it's good to laugh about at this point because, candidly, I had no business converting from college coaching, which is what I was doing beforehand, into small business, private equity type deals. But I worked anything I could possibly do, pro bono, paid internships, anything I could possibly get, to kind of recreate this narrative. And it took a lot. I mean, candidly, it took a lot of convincing. And someone took a shot on me and we started doing private equity deals in cybersecurity and defense contracting companies. And that came from me working for free for a few months, just by a relationship I had with the professor. And so I'm grateful for all these little doors that opened along the way. But the most pinnacle one to, Tsetserra was I was working with another group here in Austin. We were doing hospitality, food and beverage businesses. And just by way of just energy or being the young guy, just taking on as many things as I could, I had a lot of relationships with folks that were just blue collar industrial type business owners. It was the guy, trudging our septic tank at the new facility we were building. It was the guy that was coming and doing the course sampling, or even the roll off dumpster owner. Company owner. And I came to realize, partnerships are great. I think that there's a huge benefit to them. I still have partnerships technically today. But what I found is that I had a unique approach that I wanted to go into a space that I felt like was underserved. I think now it's kind of mainstream, but I felt like it was underserved in the sense that a lot of these business owners are the center of the business. They are, the focal point. Everyone goes through them. All the questions are asked to them, all those types of things. And how can we create a system and a process and candidly, a new culture to be able to take these businesses for more decades to come, superseding, what the previous owner was able of doing. So that's where it came by, conversations and many, many times working with the best in the industry in our local region, realizing that they were all the business owners, and I was interacting with the business owner consistently. And I was thinking to myself, hey, you're 67 years old. How are you going to transition this business? And many times they didn't have a solution. And so that really came down to, what would this look like for me to run this business? And we've learned a lot since then, but that was kind of the initial genesis that got us started.
All right. Well, you used the words, you learned a lot. So tell us a few things you learned along the way. Now that you know what you would do differently.
Yeah, so great question. First is there are a lot of businesses out there. There are a lot of businesses with the similar challenge that I just described. We call it a centralized business. It's centralized around the owner. It's not built around an org chart with responsibilities and KPIs and all these type of things that start happening as the businesses grow. What we found is that a lot of businesses in that space, one, you got to be patient because there's going to be, in my opinion, there's a decent amount of deal flow. We exclusively buy businesses in Texas that do 3 to 12 million in revenue, around 750 to 1.2 kind of net earnings or EBITDA. And with that in mind, what ends up happening a lot of the time in that space is a lot of the owners have gotten to that point and they're kind of just stagnant, right? They've made probably more money than they ever expected. Life is pretty good. They often are diversifying, buying real estate, doing other things, or they're just spending time with grandchildren for that matter. And so in that case, what we found is that there's plenty amount of deals, but a lot of businesses really do struggle to transition. And it's really wise to consider what the structure of the business's current makeup and business model is. So to not get too detailed on the front end, but we use a framework that I like to call the top-down P&L approach. I probably learned it from somewhere else, and I probably owe somebody some credit, but candidly, what we do is we look at it from a structure perspective and we say, okay, if this business is going to transition, I care less about the third bucket. So the first bucket is revenue, kind of revenue makeup. How's revenue generated? Second bucket is cost of labor, cost of goods, kind of what happens there. Is there a labor force in the area that we could actually pull from if we needed to hire more? And then third is kind of the all operational expenses or operational things, whether it be the lease, how the lease is structured, bookkeeping, all that kind of stuff, insurance, what have you. Those things matter. And a lot of the time people say, I can improve back office, or I'm going to optimize back office. They're essentially trying to create more margin on the bottom line. I find that a business at this size, in order to transition well, has to have a good makeup at the revenue side, our bucket number one. And so that's where we focus a lot of the time. And I think we missed that initially when we were going under LOI, a letter of intent to buy a business. We missed, what was that makeup of that revenue? And it ended up spending a lot of time. We didn't close on anything that I think were, big disasters from that regard, but we definitely got close, and it could have been a disaster because we didn't think about it in that framework at the time.
So you looked at more the operational side than the revenue side.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They always say revenue always solves a lot of problems.
That's right. Absolutely.
But you've been doing this for a while. You're successful. You've made some good decisions. You obviously strategically, but one is even choosing not to do something as you just alluded to. But what are a couple other key decisions that you made that really were a catalyst to move you forward successfully?
Getting out of my own way, I think, is a big part of it. So we, initially what we were doing, and this is just anybody that's buying businesses. So our goal is to own a number of businesses over the next 10 years. I want to do that in a very sustainable way, both personally and professionally. We're often not in a rush. And I say this with all respect, because what business owners have achieved to take a business to 7 figures is like 1% of all businesses start to get to that point. I think it may be even less than that. And so all that to be said, what they've been able to do is truly remarkable. And I always want to give credit to that. But what ends up happening is that business needs to go through a transition where the owner isn't the middle, as I described. And what we did wrong at the beginning was I should take me, and there's no we, and this is an all on me situation. I took too much credit and too much, weight on my shoulders to say, let me go in and I'll operate for the next 6 months. We'll figure out what the business needs, and then we'll transition out. That, for anybody that's looking to buy more than one business or want to operate more than one business, that is not the way to do it. I often, say that you can't just put in a general manager and just turn off, your phone and never connect, but you've got to create layers of people to be able to have a business that's sustainable and also convert people out of that mindset. So what I mean by that is, what I totally disregarded is, yes, I can get the owner out of the middle of the business, but all these employees have built a process, a habit around going to the owner. It's like going to the gym and all of a sudden saying, today we're going to be doing leg day, and you've never done a leg day before. Like your legs are going to hurt, and it's going to be painful, and there's going to be resistance. And so that was a huge learning curve for me, where I had employees were like, one employee was just like, I need a boss to come in every day and just tell me what to do. And I'm like, hold on a second. You're a supervisor and a manager. Like that's part of what you're supposed to do. Like there's a different approach there. Right. And so when I started converting everybody to KPIs, and I was still, quote unquote, the owner operator, it was very confusing to them. They couldn't adapt that well, because they had built such a set of muscle around being told almost every day what they're supposed to be doing. And so that was a huge learning curve for us. So now what we do is, when we come into businesses that we acquire, is we bring in an operating partner that can kind of fill that hole and implement what we're doing. So my team and myself is freed up to work on specific things that need to happen in the transition.
Yeah, great. Now, just for clarity, for my sake, is this a full buyout? The owners, you buy him out, or they stay in for a period of time? Because how does that work?
Yeah, great question.
Or
So
both?
we always try to buy majority, if not all, of the equity. There are instances where the owner will stay on in a specific capacity. I'm looking at a deal right now in the Rio Grande Valley that, he probably will stay in for a specific thing. But what I was saying before is, the business has to go through that transition. So as a result, the owner being there and kind of playing, maybe a key role or two can sometimes stifle that transition. And so we want to be thoughtful about that. And again, it's like the bottom of my heart, like, dear respect to what they've been able to do. because it's just part of the transition. If Tim Cook was in every single meeting and every single level, it wouldn't make sense. But at one point, Steve Jobs needed to do that, right? And so the business goes through different transitions and it needs a different kind of person. In this case, it was a physically different person of Apple, but in a lot of cases, the business just needs that transition. And most owners either don't want to because life's good and they're comfortable, and I totally get it, or it would take a lot of energy to make that transition. And, maybe it makes sense to bring somebody in like myself that can do that specifically. So anyways, that's where we fit in kind of the ecosystem of businesses that need to make that kind of transition point to a little more scalable, sustainable process.
Yeah, I think you're coming in at a sweet spot for everybody, for yourself and the owner, because maybe, like you said, maybe they're an idle. They're making good money, it's running, they're hanging out with the grandkids. But yet the business hasn't peaked yet, but yet they're kind of content.
Yep.
That's a good time to catch them, and a good time for you to catch for you, because there's an upside still built into the model. A lot of times, I'm sure you've seen it, owners wait too long.
Yeah.
And now the business, they've lost interest. Maybe the sales are going down, heading in the wrong way, which is also the formula for getting less on the resale. So I think it's a nice sweet spot, very unique place you're playing. I think sounds like a lot of fun personally. I think it sounds a great idea. But why Texas only?
Yeah. So I think it's the 9th largest economy in the world now. I think square footage or, area wise, it's bigger than Germany, right? So people kind of forget that when we look at it on a map. And you've got, in my opinion, you've got 4, potentially 5, even 6 major metropolitan areas. Like one of the things I was talking to one of my analysts 2 days ago is Corpus Christi is like number 2 on exports in Texas. Like it's like crazy amount. And so, you got all these businesses doing all this work in all these different areas. We are big on potentially secondary markets. I consider San Antonio a major metropolitan area, but it's kind of underutilized. And then you've got, Austin, you've got Dallas and Houston, and, all these areas, like they need small business. You've got the Teslas and the Samsungs coming in, and you've got the, Adobes and all these different big companies, but you've got all these small businesses that have been there for a long time, and they're going to need to go through some sort of transition, whether it be just life, growth and cost related to this business. Can this work? I've talked to a business owner recently that moved out of South Austin and moved to a very small area because there was enough employment opportunity for people there. And at the same while, land was cheap and they needed some decent square footage. And so, all that to be said, I think Texas provides that opportunity. And then lastly, I know what I know, and I don't know a lot of other things. And one of the things I know is Texas law and employment and taxes and, how it works. And in some states, some taxes related to the industries that we are occur. In some cases in Texas, they don't occur. And so, I would rather be a specialist and know things and be known for that than try to pretend I know everything. I had a friend send me a deal in Nevada the other day. I don't know anything about Nevada employment. I don't know what's going on over there. It would be a hassle, and I'd probably take 2 plane flights to get there anyway. So I like to keep it simple in my life, and there's enough opportunity. Just happen to be in Texas.
Okay, so our listeners, so this is now the commercial break, Malcolm. So you kind of led on that you're in a Texas-focused market, but who else are your customers? If our listeners are going, well, geez, maybe I should be thinking about transition. You gave us some of the economic parameters, but what else? Describe your customer.
Yeah.
Okay, so people could know if they're one of them. But also, this is a time for you to promote anything you want about your business. If
Sure.
you have some type of something unique, book or event or some other thing you'd like to promote, this is your free time to do that. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks, Rich. So yeah, we buy blue collar industrial type businesses in Texas, kind of doing 3 to 12 million in revenue, between 750 to 1.25, maybe a little higher in EBITDA. And our whole purpose is to transition those business owners that don't have a son, niece, nephew, or daughter to be able to do that. They're running up a circumstance where they need to have a succession plan and do that. And one of the approaches that we try to do is I'm happy to jump on a phone call with an owner Texas is our focus, but I've often done mini calls, Arkansas and St. Louis and Salt Lake City have been kind of some of the more recent ones in the last couple of weeks. But jumping on with an owner, just to give them some perspective on what does it look like to, sell to somebody like me, somebody that's kind of the next generation coming in to run a business, and what would we be looking for to make it attractive. I find that a lot of business brokers or small investment banks that we interact with, they're really great. They're really good at marketing. They've got a network of folks that they can sell to. Some have never run a business before. And so it's hard to give that perspective of like, or let alone buy a business, give a perspective on what they would be possibly really looking for to get it across the finish line. And so that's where we can help. If someone wants to reach out that's out of state or in state, that wants to just get a perspective from a buyer, and you're kind of in a blue collar industrial type business. And if to clarify what that means is if your guys are getting their hands dirty in the day, it's probably a good fit for us. And so we, for that matter, I tend to want to help the business owner out because there's a lot of information out there. But a lot of it is, disconnected and not really right in your face. And so if it's helpful, I'm happy to jump on a phone call. We've got a lot of stuff on our website. It's spelled Tsetserra. And there's a lot of articles and tools and things like that, evaluation tool, and if that's helpful. And then lastly, like I spoke, we learned at the beginning that me jumping in as the owner operator and doing all of that is not sustainable. And so we have now these partners that come with us that are running the businesses with us. And so we're always looking for people that are actively wanting to run a business. Maybe you're aspiring to do it, but you don't know what it would look like to buy one, or start from ground zero is really hard. We would love to work with you to come in and run one of the businesses that we acquire. So we love great people. I'm in the business of bringing great people around me, and so we've done that with our team, and we want to continue to do that with business owners and their teams as they transition.
Great. So not only if people are listening, if you have a company that Malcolm help you with the transition, but also if you are in the corporate America world, maybe looking to be able to run a business, what a great opportunity as well. Why blue collar?
Great question. So I think that the blue collar world, there's two different ways to really make money on a business acquisition. Let me back up for a second. You can do what a lot of private equity groups do, and we call that financial engineering. They come up with the right structure and they capital stack it the right way, and then they've got a loan that's got 5 years term, and then they're going to refinance it at this point. They're going to do all these different, moves to make the deal work. That's one way to make value in a business transaction. And all due credit, like, people have made a lot of money doing it like that. The other thing, which I think is what people are running up against now, is there's the value creation component. How do you tangibly add value to a business? And I find that a lot of business, private equity group, and again, limited scope, just interactions I have, they're struggling right now because the valuations were a little high for a number of years. They've got money they've got to put to work. And you can't really do a rigmarole, financial engineering to get the deal to work the right way. So you have to go back to, how do we grow this business? Who do we bring in? What are the consultants? All this kind of stuff. Well, we do that in-house. And what I find is that the blue collar industrial type businesses have underutilized the tools of today in order to make those businesses grow. And a lot of the time, these businesses have been started by the tradesman, the one tradesman, or the one fabricator guy that built the part for, the part for this company, and then they grew, and the so on and so forth. And so it's often been very founder driven for a long time, that they're in need to make that transition. They've typically built some sort of asset, so the businesses are fairly stable, and they've got, decent workforce to be able to do this. And so we find that in blue collar industrial type businesses, we can implement low code, no code software and the right kind of culture and SOP standardization to allow these businesses to make that jump to the next level. And a lot of white collar industrial or white collar businesses have been already doing that for the most part. They've got the software, they've got the phone software, they've got kind of the culture of everybody in the office wearing the certain thing, all that kind of stuff. A lot of these guys don't, in the blue collar world. They've got, a ragtag team potentially, or they've got a super loyal team that's been together for a long time. and it's kind of just status quo. Things are comfortable. And so, yeah, we find that we can actually, do some value creation in this space rather than having to depend on financial engineering.
Yeah, great. And I think the trades are the heartbeat of America and always will be.
I agree.
You can't automate plumbing.
That's right.
So,
That's the Mike Rowe conversation we're having right now. I completely agree.
absolutely. All right. Excuse me. Well, let's transition to the third segment of the show. And it's actually, I think it's a perfect place for you to speak about, because you're out there acquiring businesses in a very crazy market. High interest rates obviously affect your purchases. I'm sure labor shortages affect your purchases, supply chain, all this type of stuff, let alone politics and wars and things like and inflation. Okay, but you are out there acquiring businesses, and not some people may be running scared. So in that context, how do you do that? Do you see it as time for opportunity? Obviously it doesn't seem like you think it's time to sit on the sidelines. But tell me how you're approaching this market in the way you go about your business.
Yeah, great question. So, in our context, when we're acquiring a business, and again, maybe this is a little bit on the financial side of things in detail, but there's two things you can negotiate. And I really share this because I think business owners, this is a good thing for them to recognize. There's kind of two things you can negotiate. You can negotiate the price, whatever number you have in your head. Hey, it would be great to walk away with 5 million. That's the price, right? You've somehow put a peg in the ground or a stake in the ground and said, this is my price. And then there's all the terms related to that. How do you get paid out over time? Do you get paid out immediately? All those types of things. And in my opinion, there's a psychology term called a Nash equilibrium. You have to at some point come to a negotiation point where everybody feels like they gave up a little bit, but they actually won in the long run, right? And so in that case, business owners more often than not are more concerned about the price on the front end, but then you spend more time negotiating the terms, to be honest with you. You say, okay, $3 million. Here are all the terms related to that. You get paid out after 5 years. There's this kind of holdback that happens. There's warranty claim opportunities. There's insurance claims against this, all this type of stuff. I tend to want to negotiate the terms on the front end. Say, great, you want $4 million? I can work with that. Here are my terms. Let's just focus on the terms for a second, because if you ultimately want to get stuck on price and terms, the transaction's not going to go through. It's just my experience. And so what we end up doing is we try to focus on that. And so as it relates to your question, I'm focused on terms, because then I have to figure out, how does this make this work financially, with the money close? Is there a loan that goes back or holds back for a period of time? Is there an earnout? All those types of things. And so, more particularly, can I lock in some rates to be able to secure the business for that transition? So a lot of business owners, for that matter, they're concerned about what does it look like for them to transition. But the business owners we interact with, they're often, caring about the employees and the reputation of the business, and they want to be able to drive past the building in 5 years and know that the building is still there and everyone's doing great and all that kind of stuff. That we have to focus on that during the conversation. And so, often that means, what do the terms look like? Can interest rates be pushed off for a little bit? A lot of banks right now are not offering fixed situations. They're asking for variable. All those types of things have to take into consideration when I'm negotiating with the business owner. So we certainly try to create the most favorable terms with a business owner so that the business transitions well. So I hope that helps.
It does. And I remember Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank, and I'm sure you know who he is, but he was talking about he owns a lot of businesses, talks about the difficult time is capital and bringing capital to the business. And some of the business owners are not, savvy enough to understand the whole capital game that's going on. So someone like you coming in help them. They could recognize that you've obviously figured out the capital side. It's very, very interesting. Very exciting, by the way.
You can easily compress the business very quickly at the beginning. And so a business owner says, I want $5 million. The valuation really is like 3. And then they're like, I also want terms where I get 90% of the cash up front. It's like, well, hold on a second. Let's just run the simple math on this. Like if I have 1 month that doesn't look the following way, the business is screwed, right? Like it's not even like a conversation. And a lot of owners haven't done that math, and they shouldn't have done that math because maybe they're still just exploring the process. But that's a hard conversation. And I know the business brokers or advisors and small investment banks and other groups are dealing with these days to explain that, right? Just because you had 1 year that, looks a certain way doesn't mean that the business can be valued that way, because it just won't make sense. Or you shrink your buyer pool where they are coming in with 80% equity and 20% debt in the purchase price. In that case, it ends up being where, you really limit your buyer pool, and they actually don't really get, from my perspective, I wouldn't get a really good ROI on that for a long, long time. Just the way it's structured, the capital's too expensive. And so, all that to be said, that's a hard conversation, but a necessary one. And in light of the most recent, events over the last couple of years of interest rates and tightening on money, and recently with some banks and all that kind of stuff, it just makes it harder. And, my goal is to work with a business owner to get this across the finish line, rather than trying to be, only looking out for each other or ourselves.
I have one question. I've been reading up on a little bit of your background. Private equity groups come in and, like you said, there's a financial model, not much heart behind it, mostly, brains behind it.
Sure.
You talk about legacy, you pick Texas, legacy is part of your background. So you buy these businesses, which is somebody's baby that they took time to build something for their family. If I read correctly, you really concentrate on keeping that legacy going as well.
Yeah, definitely. So, the way I look at it is the legacy often resides with the key employees that have been there for a long period of time. The owner transitions out. Maybe they've handed off kind of the key relationships that they've, had for a while. They're handing off to somebody else internally. But then it's pure reputation of the business. What are you known for? Classic example in our manufacturing space that we spend a lot of time in, should I go cheap it out to something else and sell a cheaper product? I don't think that's right. I don't think that that's the way to honor the legacy of the business that it was built upon. The building was, the built upon nation of that business was, or notion of that business was, it's built of quality. It's got long-standing reputation with its customers. We handle warranties, very, very fast. So, all these types of things are kind of the undertones of culture that you have to pick up during, due diligence, which is the period of time after you sign an LOI. To understand, like, okay, can I honor this? Can I continue to do this? Is this sustainable? We've got manufacturing where everything's built in America, for that matter. And, do I want to go and build something way overseas? Like, so hard questions that you have to deal with because the business is up against external market factors. And so, it really comes down to those types of things. Can you honor what has been built and how it was built? Does this business not work anymore? And I think that those are real challenges in our space. But to your point, AI is coming in, and it's not going to take out the plumber. But it is going to change potentially the way and how you do business kind of in other factors. And you've got to be able to know, can I adapt this into this? Does it work? Or was there kind of the secret sauce? The previous owner, did it a certain way. And if you screw that up, it might completely jeopardize, like, those are real things that I, call it qualitative, quantitative aspects that we tend to figure out.
Yeah, I think that the taste in the consumer's mouth with private equity groups is when they come in, the customer service is not the same as when they were doing business with that person before.
Yep.
So the owner cashed out, yay for him, and company just looks differently today.
Yep.
But I like your approach. All right, let's wrap this up on one last question. You have to get up in the morning on Mondays. You got to lead the charge. You got to, whatever, you look in the mirror and give yourself a cheering conversation. But what do you do? Do you have mentors? Do you have certain disciplines? How do you get up to stay focused in this crazy time? Because it's pretty stressful for most people, especially founders of companies.
Yeah, I'm a dad of 2 daughters, so that gets me up in the morning enough, right? Like I feel motivated to take care of kind of what I feel I can steward. And I feel like, candidly, I feel like they get the opportunity to see it firsthand of kind of what this could look like and how you take care of people. Full disclosure, we use a lot of overseas folks. We've got a great team out of the Philippines, great team out of Central and South America. Like we really do utilize a lot of them to supplement some of the speed that we need. A lot of what we do is, we definitely have a kind of a marathon mindset, but there's also some speed to delivery that we want to continue to maintain. And so we utilize different time zones in order to do that. So my team overseas often gets started at 4:30 in the morning. So I'm up during that time. I tend to, work for an hour and a half. And then I go to the gym or do something of that nature, go for a run, kind of like 6 to 7 or maybe a little bit earlier. And so that's kind of my morning routine. It's not really that complicated. It's get up in the morning. I read a little bit of scripture. I'm a Bible believer, so I read, a little bit in the morning, and I tend to get to work, and then I go work out with a good friend or go for a run by myself or a bike ride or something. And then it's dad time for a bit until we get to school, and then it's work again. So everybody kind of knows I'm offline from about 6 to 8 in the morning. I'll answer from time to time, but those are my kind of personal hours to go work out and be dad for a bit until later. But I get up early and I go to bed early, for that matter. And my kids are enough motivation to get up in the morning. And candidly, I've got, a lot of people on payroll that I feel like I got to take care of. So, that's enough motivation for me. I don't think I need much more than that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I share your faith as well. And so I appreciate you having that balance in your life also. And it sounds like it carries through in all that you do. Malcolm, this has been really fun. How can people get a hold of you should they want to at least have a conversation with you to see if it's time for them to either help? Maybe they could be a worker for you that could help run a company, or they have a company themselves they're thinking about. Maybe it's time to think about transition.
Yeah, thanks so much. So we can be reached at info at tsetserra.com. It's spelled TSETSERRA. You can find us at Tsetserra.com online. There's a bunch of resources on there, kind of our 100-day plan and some other things that we give away. Honestly, just because we want to help the business owner understand what a transition could look like or what they could be working on now. I'm a believer that it takes 2 years or so to really prepare well for a sell. And so the more I can engage with the business owner kind of early on about what they might want to optimize for to sell their business, happy to do so. And so you can book a call with me, jump on there. And then for those that would love to run a business with us, it's called our General Vice President program. Typically it takes a few months to go through that process, but we're actively looking for people that want to run businesses with a long-term perspective, legacy mindset. And those types of people tend to be good people. So I love to bring as much around me as possible, be around great people. And so you can find out more about us at tsetserra.com or LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm on there as well. So thanks.
Very good. And we're going to capture all that information in the show notes, which will be posted in the next 2 to 3 weeks on all podcast platforms, as well as our YouTube channel. But Malcolm, again, I'm always grateful for our founders of companies who take time out of their busy day to share their wisdom with our listeners. And so thank you again for your time. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
All right, you have a great day.
Rich LeBrun here. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast, Get It Done, Entrepreneurs. If you are a successful business owner who would like to be on this program, please visit us at rlebrun.com/podcast and fill out the form, and we will reach out to you. If you got something out of this interview, would you share this episode on social media? Just do a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend or post it on the socials. If you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show. Include the hashtag GetItDoneEntrepreneurs. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Go to our website, rlebrun.com, or follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time.